They called me the family failure for choosing sustainable design over traditional construction, I said. So I built a billion-dollar eco-development company in secret and bought their land. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you, subscribe. Because this isn't just a story. It's a reminder that quiet ambition can transform entire industries. I adjusted the sleeves of my faded navy blazer in the mirror of my downtown Seattle apartment, deliberately choosing something worn and unimpressive that wouldn't raise any questions. The basic laptop I kept just for family visits sat closed on my kitchen table, displaying only a handful of simple design sketches. When opened, just enough to maintain the illusion. The invitation to the Bennett family gathering rested nearby, its embossed lettering. Catching the light from my pendant lamps. Join us to honor the legacy of Bennett Construction and celebrate 50 years of building excellence. My stomach tightened as I read the words. I'd never been included in their definition of excellence. The event, as always, was hosted at the top floor of my father's company headquarters overlooking the city skyline. It promised catered luxury, industry networking, and, as usual, subtle reminders that I'd fallen short of the Bennett standard. My phone vibrated with a message from my COO, contract signed. We officially own the Westlake development parcel. Bennett Construction had just sold one of their prime downtown properties to my company. They had no idea it was mine. 10 years of careful misdirection was finally about to deliver the validation I never dared to hope for. The drive through Seattle's busy streets gave me time to reflect. I'd grown up in the Bennett world, where concrete foundations and steel beams were practically genetic inheritance. My father, Richard Bennett, built a construction empire on traditional buildings. My brother Nathan was the golden heir, Harvard MBA to the core. And then there was me, Marie, the odd one, the daughter who sketched sustainable building, designs instead of studying profit margins on conventional construction. Eco-design won't feed you, Marie, my father once growled. It's idealism, not a career path. I still remember telling them I'd turned down my acceptance to Yale to attend, an architectural college focused on sustainable design. My mother nearly fainted as if I'd announced I was joining a commune. What they never knew was that while I studied architectural design, I quietly earned certification in real estate development. My nights were spent learning property law and sustainable building codes. My first eco-friendly microhousing project won a prestigious design competition. The prize, $100,000 and a contract to design a sustainable office building. That was my seed money. I poured every cent into hiring talented engineers, building a team and pitching corporate clients on sustainable building solutions. Turns out the business world was hungry for innovation that aligned profit with planet, something traditional construction companies couldn't deliver. Now at 32, I lead Aurora Properties. We develop sustainable buildings for Fortune 100 companies, and today, Bennett Construction becomes our unwitting partner. We incorporated as Aurora Properties, and I made sure to use my middle name, Marie Aurora, on every document. Marie Aurora, not Marie Bennett, became the architectural visionary behind what would become one of the most influential sustainable development firms in North America. My family remained oblivious. To them, I was still just Marie, the idealistic dreamer who occasionally designed interior spaces for local businesses. Whenever they asked about my career, I gave them just enough information to maintain their low expectations. The corporate headquarters came into view, my father's pride and joy, a towering glass and steel structure with a massive carbon footprint. My modest electric compact car looked completely out of place among the luxury vehicles in the circular driveway. I parked near the entrance, took a deep breath and checked my appearance in the rearview mirror. Minimal makeup, hair in a simple ponytail. My pantsuit was off-brand, my flats deliberately scuffed. Everything about my appearance had been carefully curated to convey the message. Still struggling, still irrelevant. "Marie," my mother's voice called out as I walked toward the entrance. "We were starting to think you wouldn't make it before the speeches." She greeted me with her customary air kiss, her eyes immediately assessing my outfit. I noticed her quick look of satisfaction. My appearance was appropriately unimpressive. "Traffic," I said with a shrug. "And I had to finish a design concept for a client." "Oh," her eyebrows arched slightly. "Someone is actually paying for your little drawings?" The pause before drawings felt deliberate and dismissive. If only she knew that just yesterday I'd secured a $70 million contract with a global tech corporation to build their new zero-carbon headquarters using revolutionary sustainable materials. Instead, I just nodded. Yeah, just a small local boutique. Nothing special. The interior of the building hadn't changed, all chrome and marble, with sterile modern art and oversized portraits of Nathan and his business accomplishments. Photos lined the hallway. Nathan at Harvard. Nathan, receiving an award from the Business Association. Nathan at the groundbreaking of the newest Bennett construction project. There was one photo of me, hidden in a corner me, at 17, holding a small environmental design award, looking out of place among the family's real achievements. The main reception area was filled with conversation, discussions about property values, construction contracts, and political connections floated through the air. Near the bar, Cousin Blake was bragging about his investment fund's latest acquisition. Aunt Linda was promoting her daughter's high-end interior design business. And at the center of it all stood Nathan, impeccably dressed in his custom-tailored suit. "Marie," he called, raising his champagne glass with that familiar condescending tone. "Still playing with your eco-friendly building blocks? I'm so glad you could take time away from your sustainable sketches to join us." Nathan offered a brief embrace, barely touching me, careful not to wrinkle his perfectly tailored suit. "You look..." He paused, eyes scanning my deliberately understated outfit. "Comfortable." "Thanks," I replied, tugging slightly at my worn blazer, playing the role he expected. "Your suit looks expensive." "Tom Ford," he said, smoothing the lapel. "A little reward for our latest victory. Bennett Construction just secured the Madison Square development bid over our biggest competitor." I nodded, fighting back a smile. If only he knew that by tomorrow, his precious development land would be under my control. Bennett Construction was hours away from discovering that Aurora Properties had acquired the entire Westlake parcel through our newly established subsidiary. "That's impressive," I said casually. "Sounds like business is booming." "Better than ever," Nathan boasted, chest puffing with pride. "Actually, I was just sharing our next expansion strategy. We're moving into eco-friendly construction. Green facades, sustainable materials. Environmental design is the next frontier for us." My heart raced. There it was, the reason. I'd moved so aggressively to acquire their development parcel. They had no idea they were marching straight into my territory. "Sustainable design?" I asked with feigned naivety. "Sounds complicated." Nathan laughed, his voice echoing a little too loudly. "Oh, Marie, it's just marketing. We won't be handling the actual environmental innovations. That's what consultants are for. People like..." He waved vaguely in my direction with his champagne glass. Relatives had started to gather around, drawn by his laughter and the scent of superiority that always followed him. "Still drafting those tree-hugger buildings, Marie?" My cousin Blake chimed in with a smirk. "I've got a couple of interns at my firm who do environmental consulting on the side. Want me to connect you? Might help your little business." "Thanks," I murmured. "But I'm managing fine with my projects." "Managing?" Nathan arched an eyebrow. "Is that why you're still driving that electric compact car?" They didn't know I owned 3 vehicles, including a custom Tesla Model S, and that the modest apartment I claimed to live in, I actually owned the entire building, retrofitted with state-of-the-art sustainable technology. "I get by," I said with a shrug. "Not everyone needs marble countertops and imported hardwood to feel accomplished." "Getting by isn't succeeding," came a deep, familiar voice behind me. I turned to see my father standing there with his characteristic stern expression, arms crossed over his chest. "Nathan's latest project is worth more than you'll ever make. Designing treehouses and grass roofs," he said flatly. The fire of indignation burned in my chest, but I forced a smile. In less than 24 hours, the sustainable designs they mocked would own the land they coveted. By this time tomorrow, Marie Aurora would be revealed as the CEO of Aurora Properties and the new owner of Bennett Construction's most valuable development parcel. But tonight I simply nodded and excused myself to get a drink. Let them enjoy their illusion of superiority a little longer. Let them believe I was still the struggling environmentalist, barely covering rent. After all, sustainable revolution is an art form too. The family gathering stretched into the evening, each hour, bringing fresh opportunities for my relatives to offer backhanded compliments, or outright reminders of my potential that never amounted to much in their eyes. Meanwhile, I discreetly checked my phone. Messages arrived from my executive team. Press release approved by legal. Coverage. Confirmed with Architectural Digest for the 1000 AM announcement. Land transfer documents finalized. Everything was falling into place. I stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights sparkle below as dusk settled over Seattle. That's when my father approached, swirling a glass of his favorite 18-year Highland Scotch, the same brand I kept stocked in my corner office downtown. "Marie," he began, his voice carrying that familiar tone of disappointment. "Your mother and I have been talking." I braced myself. These conversations never ended well. "Your brother's new sustainability division will need designers," he continued. "Entry-level positions. Layouts, basic green elements, nothing too experimental but stable. Good benefits, a real salary." He emphasized real as if jabbing a finger into my chest. "He's willing to give you a chance," he added. "Despite your lack of practical experience." I set my sparkling water down to hide my amusement. If he only knew that Aurora Properties' annual revenue nearly tripled what Bennett's entire sustainable initiative was projected to earn. "Thanks, Dad," I said, "but I'm doing fine with my freelance work." He sighed heavily. "Marie, you're 32. Don't you think it's time to stop pretending these green designs are a viable career?" His gaze drifted to my simple outfit, the shoes I'd deliberately scuffed, the carefully curated facade I'd maintained for years. "You could have gone to Yale. You could have led the next generation of Bennett builders." Instead, I'd chosen sustainable innovation and built an empire. They couldn't even see. I opened my mouth to speak, ready to finally reveal the truth when my phone vibrated. My COO, all investors confirmed for tomorrow's 900 a.m. announcement. "We're ready to proceed." I closed my mouth. "Not yet. 12 more hours, and then the real construction begins." "Actually," my father pressed, his brow furrowed in that familiar, disappointed way. "Nothing," I said quietly. "You're right. I made my choices." He shook his head and walked away, leaving me standing by the window as the city lights competed with the stars above. Across the room, I heard Nathan's laugh rise again, sharp and performative. "Marie's always had these idealistic notions," he was saying to Aunt Linda. "Some people just aren't built for practical success. But hey, at least she's finally realistic enough to accept guidance." I glanced at my watch. 7:30 p.m. 14 hours until everything changed. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of condescension and patronizing offers. Blake, ever smug, offered to teach me basic project management. Aunt Linda suggested her daughter could help me create a professional portfolio website. Even my mother pulled me aside to show me postings for junior interior designer positions. Through it all, I nodded, smiled, and played my part, the quiet, harmless underachiever in their overachieving world. But beneath the surface, I was counting down the minutes. As the party wound down, Nathan found me near the coat check. "I hope you'll seriously consider Dad's offer," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "We'll start you at junior level. Just simple green elements for marketing materials and client presentations. Nothing too advanced." I thought of my downtown office with its panoramic view of Puget Sound, of the 150-plus employees at Aurora Properties, of the revolutionary carbon-negative buildings we were developing with tech companies and municipal governments. "I'll think about it," I said smoothly. "Don't wait too long," he warned. "Once we announce our sustainability initiative next week, we'll have applications pouring in. I'm only offering this because you're family." He handed me my coat. "Oh," he added, eyeing my outfit, "and if you do join us, we'll need to update your wardrobe. That blazer is a bit dated. You should look more professional." I glanced down at my deliberately modest outfit, thinking of my closet at home filled with Stella McCartney, Eileen Fisher, and other sustainable luxury brands. "I'll keep that in mind," I replied. As I drove back toward the city, the weight of the past decade settled over me. 10 years of playing small, of letting them believe I'd failed. And now, finally, the moment I'd prepared for was almost here. The reveal, the recognition, the revolution. Back in my actual home, a penthouse apartment in a LEED Platinum-certified building, I'd helped design. I changed out of my struggling designer costume and into comfortable lounge. Wear made from organic cotton, luxuriously soft and worth more than my entire fake wardrobe. I opened my actual laptop, the one I used to run my company, not the outdated model I brought to family functions. On screen, the final acquisition documents for Bennett. Construction's Westlake development parcel glowed softly. A message appeared from Liana. "My executive assistant, everything confirmed for tomorrow. Car arrives at 8:30 a.m. The Bennett executives still don't know you'll be at the meeting." I poured myself a glass of the same aged scotch my father had been drinking earlier, savoring the irony, and stepped onto my terrace. Below, the city pulsed with energy and possibility. Somewhere across town, Nathan was probably still congratulating himself, telling his wife about how he was giving his poor misguided sister a chance at a real career. My private phone rang, the line only my core team had access to. It was Jackson, my COO and oldest business partner. "Marie," he said, his voice steady. "Final confirmation for tomorrow. Once we go public, everything changes." "My family?" I asked softly. "They'll finally see the truth," he said. "All of it," I finished. There was a pause. "Are you sure you want to do it this way? We could send another representative. Keep your identity private a while longer." I gazed out over the city skyline, thinking about years of dismissal, the offers of help, the pitying glances. "No," I said firmly. "I want to see their faces when they realize exactly who they've been underestimating." After hanging up, I remained on the terrace, the cool evening breeze against my face. Every condescending comment, every eye roll, every time I'd been written off. It had fueled me, driven me to this moment. Tomorrow they'd discover that the daughter they dismissed as impractical had quietly revolutionized the industry they thought they dominated. That success didn't have to come at the environment's expense. Tomorrow, Marie Bennett would fade away, and Marie Aurora, CEO of Aurora Properties, would emerge. I raised my glass to the city lights. The performance was over. The revelation was about to begin. The Bennett Construction Conference Room looked exactly as I remembered, all mahogany, leather, and ego. I stood in the private elevator, now wearing a tailored, sustainable wool suit that cost more than 3 months of the junior-level salary Nathan had so generously offered me. "Ready, miss?" "Aurora?" Jackson asked beside me. We had built this company together from the ground up. I checked my reflection in the elevator's polished brass panel. "Let's change the future," I said. Gone was the carefully constructed image of the struggling designer. Today I embodied the CEO I truly was. Marie Aurora in an impeccably tailored suit, recycled gold jewelry gleaming subtly, my posture, radiating confidence and purpose. "Ready," I confirmed to Jackson, just as the elevator doors opened. On to the executive floor of Bennett Construction. Inside the conference room, Nathan was holding court, gesturing enthusiastically as he addressed the gathered executives. My father sat at the head of the table, composed and authoritative in his traditional navy suit. Neither noticed me at first, too absorbed in the future they assumed was securely theirs. "The Aurora Properties team should be arriving any minute," Nathan was saying with confidence. "Once we finalize this partnership, Bennett Construction will dominate the sustainable development sector within months." "Actually," I said, stepping fully into the room, "there's been a significant change of plans." The room fell silent. Nathan stopped mid-sentence, momentarily speechless. My father slowly rose to his feet, confusion hardening his features. "Marie, what are you doing here? This is a private executive meeting." I smiled, calm and composed, and placed my portfolio on the table. "I know exactly what this meeting is. In fact, I'm the one who arranged it." "This is ridiculous," Nathan snapped, recovering from his surprise. "Security!" "That won't be necessary," Jackson said smoothly, stepping forward. "Ms. Aurora has every right to be here." "Aurora?" Nathan's face contorted in confusion. My father's expression darkened with uncertainty. "Professionally," I said, opening my portfolio, "I go by Marie Aurora, the name I used to build Aurora Properties from conception to reality. I began distributing documents, land acquisition agreements, final purchase contracts, press materials ready for release. The color drained from my father's face as he read the heading, "Official Transfer of Bennett. Construction's Westlake Development Parcel to Aurora Properties." This can't be right," he stammered, his voice suddenly lacking its usual authority. "I assure you it's completely accurate," I said, walking to the opposite end of the table and taking my seat, my rightful position. "Let me tell you about a woman who loved architecture and sustainability equally, who studied real estate law at night, while designing eco-friendly buildings by day, who recognized what everyone else missed, a market gap in sustainable urban development, and built a company worth over $500 million. Nathan paled as he flipped through the pages, his hands visibly shaking. "You're Marie Aurora? You own Aurora Properties?" I nodded. "The company you've been desperate to partner with has been mine for a decade, since around the time you all decided I'd wasted my potential." "But you live in that small apartment," Nathan stammered. "You drive that economy car." I laughed softly. I own the entire building where that apartment is located. And that car, just part of my costume for family gatherings. I paused, meeting his stunned gaze. Would you have taken me seriously if I'd arrived in my custom Tesla? Would you have assumed I could afford it? Or would you have looked for some other explanation? My father was still staring at the documents, specifically the page showing Aurora Properties' current market valuation and environmental impact statistics. All this time, he murmured. All this time, I echoed, my voice steady and clear. Every holiday dinner, every birthday celebration, every dismissive comment about my impractical passion, every comparison to Nathan's real success. While you were discounting me, I was creating something more innovative than Bennett. Construction ever attempted to be. Why? Nathan demanded, his voice rising with indignation. Why hide it? Why let us believe you were struggling? Because you never would have understood it, I said firmly. You would have tried to redirect it, conventionalize it, incorporate it into your outdated model, strip it of its environmental integrity and call it progress. I needed freedom to build it according to sustainable principles. I stood adjusting my blazer with quiet confidence. And now, as of 900 a.m. this morning, Aurora Properties is the legal owner of the Westlake development parcel. We'll be implementing our carbon-negative community plan, immediately prioritizing innovation, not tradition. I turned toward my brother. Nathan, your proposed position as head of sustainability will not be moving forward. You're welcome to apply for a position on our community engagement team. I looked to my father. You'll be invited to serve in an advisory capacity, if you're willing to embrace genuine sustainable practices. The silence that followed was profound. Even the executives, who typically nodded along with everything my father said, sat frozen in astonishment. You can't do this, Nathan finally sputtered. Actually, I said, taking out my phone, I already have. The board approved the sale last week. They simply didn't know who was buying. My phone chimed right on schedule. I turned the screen toward the table Architectural Digest. Breaking the visionary revealed, Marie Aurora announces herself as CEO of Aurora Properties in groundbreaking acquisition of Bennett Construction's prime development parcel. Oh, and regarding that junior position you offered me yesterday, I added, turning to Nathan, I'll have to decline. My qualifications are somewhat beyond entry level. The next hour passed in a blur of signatures and stunned expressions. My father sat silently staring at the polished conference table, now effectively under my direction. As the room emptied, leaving only us, Nathan finally spoke, his voice hollow. All these years, he said, you let us think you were failing. You let us feel sorry for you. No, I corrected him, meeting his gaze directly. You chose to pity me. You saw what you wanted to see, the disappointment, the idealist. You never once considered I might be succeeding on different terms. My father rose slowly from his chair, looking suddenly older and somewhat diminished. Marie, It's all right, I said calmly. I didn't do this out of spite. I held his gaze. I did it because it made business and environmental sense. Aurora Properties needs this land to complete our sustainable community. Vision and Bennett Construction. It needs our innovation if it wants to remain relevant in the changing market. I gathered my documents, closing my portfolio with a subtle click. There's a press conference tonight at the Olympic Hotel to formally announce the development. I hope you'll both attend. They nodded wordlessly, still processing the revelation. Good. I moved toward the door. Oh, and Nathan. I paused, allowing the moment to settle. Next time you talk about professional appearance, remember who's leading the future of sustainable development. The elevator doors closed behind me. The ride back to Aurora Properties headquarters, our glass and timber building overlooking Elliott Bay, was quiet. Jackson didn't speak. He understood I needed time to process. It wasn't until we returned to my office that he asked, "Worth the wait?" I walked to the window, watching sunlight reflect off the water, the Space Needle standing tall against the backdrop of mountains. It feels right, I said quietly, like completing a building I started designing a decade ago. My phone began buzzing repeatedly with notifications. Cousin Blake, who once offered to teach me business basics, now wanted to discuss potential investment opportunities. Aunt Linda had emailed asking if her daughter could interview for a design position. Even my mother had texted, "Why didn't you tell us?" I left them unanswered for now. They could speak with me tonight, when I was no longer the family failure, but their equal. Perhaps more. Instead, I opened my laptop and began drafting my speech. Tomorrow I'd address the team working on the Westlake project. I wanted them to understand that while leadership had changed, our commitment to transformative, sustainable development was stronger than ever. Then another message appeared from Nathan: "We need to talk," before the press conference. "Please." I considered it briefly, then typed my response: "Come to my office." The real one. Aurora Building, 15th floor. Reception will be expecting you. An hour later, Nathan stood in my office, uncomfortable and out of place. His eyes moved across the space, taking in the living plant wall, the reclaimed wood furniture, the architectural models of zero-carbon buildings, the floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city, all evidence of a life he never imagined I'd created. "Why?" he asked simply. "Why what?" I replied. "Why did you hide this? Why did you buy our land? Why let us all think you were failing? All of it." I gestured for Nathan to take a seat in one of my sustainable bamboo chairs. "Because you and Dad would never have accepted my success. On my terms," I explained. "You would have tried to reshape it, conventionalize it, force it into your definition of achievement. Concrete and steel. Traditional profits over environmental innovation." I shook my head. But Aurora Properties succeeded precisely because it wasn't conventional. We innovate. We create sustainable spaces. We lead with environmental responsibility, not just quarterly profits. "But we're family," he said defensively. "We could have supported you." "Like you supported me yesterday?" I raised an eyebrow. "By offering me an entry-level position out of pity. That's not support, Nathan. That's condescension." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "I never imagined," he admitted softly. "I never even considered this possibility." "Because you never truly looked," I said simply. "None of you did. You saw what you expected, the impractical sister, who chose sustainability over tradition. You never paused to consider that perhaps environmental responsibility and business success aren't mutually exclusive." He turned toward the window the city reflected in his eyes. "What happens now?" "Now," I said, exhaling slowly, "and we move forward. The Westlake parcel becomes the centerpiece of Aurora, Property's sustainable community vision. We create something revolutionary. If you're willing to learn, to adapt, there might be a place for you. But not as the leader. Not on this project." He nodded, the reality finally sinking in. "You're not just my little sister with unrealistic dreams anymore, are you?" I offered a small smile. "I never was. You just never saw who I really was." That evening, standing before our extended family at the Olympic Hotel, I raised my glass. "To sustainable futures," I said, "and to building a better world, one innovative structure at a time." Back in my penthouse, I opened an old sketchbook, the same one I'd carried through architecture school. On the last page, in fading ink, was the quote that had guided me. "The greatest architecture lies in harmonizing human vision with nature's wisdom, revealing that harmony at the perfect moment." I smiled and closed the book. My sustainable vision was becoming reality. If you've made it this far, thank you for accompanying me through the silence, the struggle, and the triumph. My name is Maria Aurora, and for 10 years I was the family failure, the dreamer, the environmentalist who could never quite fit in. I watched from the periphery as my family built conventional legacies, while I quietly constructed mine with sustainability at its core. But today I stand in the light, not to boast, but to remind you, you don't need to validate your worth according to someone else's metrics. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been told your ideas were too idealistic, too unconventional, too ahead of their time, I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts below. What would you say to someone just beginning their journey towards sustainable innovation? What would you tell the version of yourself who nearly compromised their vision? I want this space to be more than just my story. It should be a community of visionaries who understand what it means to be underestimated and to persevere regardless. And here's my perspective. From one sustainability pioneer to another, let them misunderstand your vision. Let them doubt your practical sense. Use their skepticism as motivation, not to prove them wrong, but to prove your vision right. Build with integrity. Grow with purpose. And when the moment arrives, emerge with something so transformative. They'll wonder how they missed its potential. If you believe stories like this matter, subscribe to this channel. Share it with someone fighting for their sustainable vision. We need more narratives where environmental innovation doesn't just survive, but thrives, because success doesn't always conform to traditional models. Sometimes it comes wrapped in reclaimed materials and solar panels in late nights and quiet determination. Sometimes it looks exactly like you, So to anyone out there building a sustainable future in silence, keep going. The masterpiece isn't just the structure you're creating. It's the better world you're helping to build. And when your moment finally arrives, make sure they witness every innovative detail.